Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Great Black Speakers Podcast, where we connect through conversation. I am your host, Lawrence Watkins. I am the founder and CEO of Great Black Speakers. I'm also the president and chief operating officer of the Black Business School. So today we have the pleasure of connecting you with Samuel Genis. And Samuel is the founder of UShare 360. It is a marketing automation firm. That's what I'm going to call it now until I get a better understanding of what actually Samuel does. And today we're talking about how Samuel, who is a high school dropout, became a leader in the marketing tech space, which doesn't have very many of us in there. So Samuel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. And I met you at the All Black National Convention in Houston, Texas, and you came out and you actually set up a table to vend at the All Black National Convention, and struck up a great conversation with Boyce and other team members. And we were very impressed by your professionalism and your mission and vision in terms of what you were doing with your company. So, can you explain to the audience, what you currently do, what is UShare 360, and how you've gotten to this point in your career?
Yeah, so UShare 360 is we're an IT company, and we created a platform called the Back Office. And it's an all-in-one business management platform that enables small businesses to manage their websites, marketing automation, marketing funnels, email campaigns, surveys, billing, projects, teams, and tasks, all of their contacts. And so basically it's an all-in-one platform. So they don't necessarily need to spend money on ClickFunnels, Lead Pages, MailChimp, Constant Contacts, Wix, WordPress, Trello, Asana, and some of these other platforms, and then try to bootstrap them all together using platforms like Zapier and all that. We got to this, we came to this, or I came to this space because I've always been a developer. And I used to work for a company in Huntersville, North Carolina. And I was just, happy with working, right? And I single-handedly built a real estate property management firm for this company that they initially leased out for $1 million each. So their customers were Family Dollar, Rack Room Shoes, Lincoln Properties, and I was getting at the time like $65,000 a year, and I just realized more and more that I was giving my virtue away. Basically, I was giving my expertise away, and I didn't have no ownership. I didn't have no stake in the company. I couldn't pass it down to my grandkids, and I felt miserable, And so I decided that I have to invest. I have to use my skills and abilities and create something that I can actually pass down to the grandkids that I don't even have. And so I got into the entrepreneurial space.
Got you. And where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Bellport, Long Island in New York.
So a New Yorker.
Yep.
Let's take a step back though, right? Because you mentioned something before we got on the call today in terms of you being a high school dropout. So can you talk about that in regards to your youth and what path you were on in your youth, and how you even turned that into a job making $65,000 a year, let alone like your own company?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I was somewhat bullied when I was younger, I grew up, my parents weren't rich, working class. So I didn't always have like the latest haircut, didn't always have the fancy shoes. And so I was picked on a little bit. My sister sometimes would come to my rescue and stuff like that. But I actually had an issue with a kid in Bellport, and we got into a fight on a bus. Actually, he got off on my bus stop, and we got into a fight. And I knew at that moment, we're gonna get into a scuffle, and I actually lost that fight, and really pissed off. And I was like, I'm not going back to school. And so my father was like, get a job and pay rent. That was his rebuttal to my statement. And he never pushed me to finish, never, never did any of that. Just, I think I was probably 16 at the time. And so I just started working, and got into that whole thing and just trying to make a dollar, right? Survival mode. And then eventually I ended up going to New York. I actually ended up running away, after that kind of period. That was a weird situation, me and my father wasn't seeing eye to eye. And I actually love my father, but that little season we went through was kind of crazy. So I ended up running away, and I ended up staying at a place called Covenant House in Manhattan on 42nd Street. And they eventually sent me to another division of Covenant House, which was called Rites of Passage. And as long as you had a job, you could basically stay there. So it was there where I got a job working at Burger King, and I was like, I forget, I think it was on Fifth Avenue, or I forgot what street it was on, Sixth Avenue in Manhattan, New York City. And I was working with a lot of older women. Come to find out, those older women were on work release. They were actually, in prison, and they were allowed to come out and work. And that's when it really hit me. I was like, man, what am I gonna do with my life? I'm a high school dropout. I'm working at Burger King. I'm 18 at the time, or 17, 18 at the time. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? And so I went to an employment agency, and at the time it was WordPerfect. WordPerfect was out. For those of you who are old enough to remember, they were the joint back in the days. They were the leader when it came to word processors. And so I went to an employment agency, and I thought I knew computers. You know how like you think you know something, and then you get around people who actually know it, and you realize you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those situations where they gave me a test, and I failed, so bad that I didn't even finish taking the test. I just got up and walked out. And and there was an ex-priest at this Rites of Passage. He was one of the counselors. And we started talking. I was just like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. Like, I really don't know. And he was like, what do you need? I said, well, I need to get a better job. But I thought I knew computers, and I don't. And I said, I need a WordPerfect book. And I already had checked the bookstore, and I knew the book was around like $38. And I didn't even have $38, So he actually reached in his pocket, gave me $40. And he was like, go buy the book. And when you're done with the book, give it back to me. And so I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I bought the book. And I went through that. I went through a 1,400-page book in 1 week. Like, they had a computer room. I was in there sometimes 24 hours, the whole day. I just came out for breakfast and lunch. The security guard would come by and wouldn't even lock the door. He's just like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. They typically would lock it and kick everybody out, and you have to come back in the morning. The first 2 days he did that, but after the third day, it seemed like he must have just saw me on my grind, and he just left me alone. And so I went through those 1,400 pages, and, a thick book, and I mastered WordPerfect in 1 week. Went to that same employment agency the following day and aced the test, got a job immediately, doing data entry, word processing, and all that. And then that's what kind of got me into corporate America, those corporate American jobs, just where I'm doing data entry, I'm doing word processing, because by that time, I took Mavis Beacon software and got my typing up to 72 words a minute. My data entry keystrokes was like 11,000 keystrokes. So it was very easy for me to get into the companies at that time. I never had a hard time finding a job. And mind you, I still didn't have a diploma yet. I'm still a high school dropout. But by that time, I'm making $15 an hour, as a high school dropout, but I had a marketable skill. So that's something that really stuck with me, is you have a marketable skill, you can get somewhere.